So guys, since we have looked at the illustrations and your workbook problems and also your additions to study material which were done post your 2021, now let's look at your compendium of solved illustrations in your module number 6. Guys, your module number 6 will include all questions related to RTPs, model test papers and past exam questions which have been asked as per your IND AS 23. So let's talk about those relevant problems. Look at the question number 1 first. If I'm looking at question number 1, Marine Transport Limited has ordered for 3 ships. Now this is one question that we have just solved. We've just solved this question as a part of our workbook. First question. Has ordered 3 ships and it pays a down payment of 25% of contract value of each ship out of a long-term borrowing from a scheduled bank. The delivery has to commence from the financial year 2027. On 1st March of 2022, the builder has informed that they have commenced the production of 1 ship. There is no progress on the other 2 ships. Marine Transport Limited prepared its financial statements on a financial year basis. Is it permissible for Marine Transport to capitalize the borrowing cost for the financial year ended on 31st March 21 and 31st March 22? Guys, it is a qualifying asset. Yes, because it takes almost 7 years to get ready for its intended use. But if you look at the first year, that is on 31st March 2021, we have no idea of what is the progress on the ship. Therefore, it is not possible for us to capitalize any borrowing cost for the year ended 31st March 2021. With respect to 31st March 2022, if you look at, 1 ship has already been commenced the production on 1st March. So only for 1 month, for that 1/3 of the total number of ships, you are eligible to capitalize as on 31st March 2012. Clear? Because you have the concept of commencement of capitalization, which is broadly categorized into 3 steps. And all these 3 conditions are necessary to be satisfied. Number 1, borrowing cost should be incurred, expenditure should be incurred on the qualifying asset, and the activities necessary to progress for the completion of the qualifying asset are in progress. So only when these 3 conditions are satisfied, it is eligible to capitalize the borrowing cost. In this case, it is only possible on 31st March 2022 to establish the borrowing cost to be capitalized, that too only in respect of 1 ship out of all the 3 ships, and that too only for 1 month. All other borrowing costs should be transferred to P&L as expense. Now, the next question. X Limited has a treasury department which arranges the requirement of the company, including its funds for working capital and expansion programs. The company had the following qualifying asset incurred on 1st July for 2,50,000 and on 1st December for 3 lakhs. This is exactly the same question which we have solved. We found out the capitalization rate of those 2 non-specific borrowings. One is a long-term loan and other one is a working capital loan. The value of your capitalization rate was 11%. So 11% for 9 months and 11% for 4 months. On those values, the total amount eligible to be capitalized, 31,625. Even this problem we have already solved. So I'm not going further into discussion about the problem. So let us look at question number 3 then. Alpha Limited on 1st April borrowed 9% for 30 lakhs to finance the construction of 2 financial assets. 2 qualifying assets. Construction of factory building and office building, 5 lakhs and 10 lakhs for each of that was incurred on 1st April. 1st October, again 5 lakhs and 10 lakhs. This was our illustration question number 2. This was our illustration in question number 2, where we reduce the investment income or your return on idle funds at the rate of 7%. This is exactly the same question that we had there. We don't have to discuss any further. What about your question number 4? Beta Limited has the following loans in place as on 31st March 2022. Bank loan, term loan, debentures. Now, this is also another question that we have solved as a part of your illustrations. 14% debentures were issued for the construction of office building. Development has not commenced yet. So the entire debenture, which is a specific borrowing for the construction of office building, should be expensed. It is not eligible to be capitalized because the development has not yet started. However, for the balance 2 loans, which is given in the form of 18% bank loan and 16% term loan, the capitalization rate was 16.5%, and that 16.5% applied on 5 lakhs and 25 lakhs. 5 lakhs incurred on 1st April throughout the year, 25 lakhs incurred on 1st Jan only for 3 months. Borrowing cost eligible to be capitalized 1,85,625. Again, an illustration question. X is commencing a new construction project which is financed by a borrowing. The key dates are as follows. 15 May, loan interest has incurred. 2nd of June, technical site planning has commenced. 19 June, they incurred the expenditure on the project. Therefore, the relevant date for capitalization is 19 June because number 1, borrowing cost is incurred on 15 May. Activities necessary for the completion of qualifying asset are in progress on 2nd June. 19 June, he incurred expenditure on the project. So, therefore, all 3 conditions are only satisfied on 19 June. Therefore, you start capitalizing or your commencement of capitalization should be from 19 June onwards. ₹10,000 of a US dollar loan has been borrowed at 5%. We have seen a similar question, but there the value of the dollar was 20,000 and not 10,000. So just a change in the number, otherwise it will still remain the same. Corresponding amount can be borrowed at 11% in India, right? Let us solve this question because he has added something towards the end. On 1st April, the exchange rate between the two currencies was 45 and 48 towards the end of the year. Corresponding amount borrowed in India is at 11%. And what will be your answer if the interest rate of local borrowing is 13%? So you'll have to solve in both ways. If it is 11%, what is your answer? If it is 13%, what is your answer? Let's start solving this. The amount is $10,000. Exchange rate at the beginning of the year was 45. Towards the end of the year is 48. Interest rate in US dollar is 5%. Interest rate in INR is 11% initially. Subsequent part, you take it as 13%. This is a model test paper question, guys. Question number 6, which I am trying to solve from your Compendium of solid illustrations. So, first is the actual borrowing, which is in US dollar. The exchange rate, which is applicable. And the rupee equivalent borrowing. Start with amount of borrowing. The amount of borrowing is $10,000. On that date, the exchange rate was 45 rupees per dollar. Therefore, a rupee equivalent borrowing would have been 4,50,000. Interest rate in dollar, the interest rate is 5%. In rupee, initially I am taking 11%. I will take it at 13% and also solve the answer. Interest payable at the end of the year. End of the year, the interest payable at 5% is $550. Sorry, $500. On that date, the exchange rate was 48 per dollar. So the actual amount of interest incurred in rupee terms is how much? 500 into 48, 24,000. Rupee equivalent loan gives me an interest rate of payable of 49,500. Definitely there is a savings in interest cost. Savings and interest cost. actual interest cost was 24,000. If I would have incurred a rupee equivalent loan, it would have carried an interest of 49,500. Therefore, the amount is 25,000. The amount of savings, exchange loss, on dollar borrowing. The loss is 3 rupees per dollar. Be 3 per dollar. And the total amount of borrowing was $10,000. So therefore, the actual loss is 30,000 rupees. Comparing these two, I can identify my borrowing cost or exchange loss to the extent it can be regarded as borrowing cost. Lower of the above, 25,500, which is your definition of borrowing cost. Exchange loss regarded as borrowing cost. As per IND AS 23. The balance exchange loss should be considered under IND AS 21. Exchange loss as per IND AS 21, which should be treated. The amount would have been, the total is 30,000. Out of 30,000, you are treating 25,500 as exchange loss as per borrowing cost. So the balance amount would have been 4,500. Correct? Now, what if your interest rate was not 11, but instead it was 13%? What if the rupee equivalent loan was carrying a rate of 13% and not 11%? In such case, what would have been your answer? Again, let's try to calculate. Dollar borrowing. Exchange rate applicable. Equivalent borrowing. Let's start. Borrowing amounts. They borrowed $10,000 when the exchange rate was 45 rupees per dollar. Amount was 4,50,000. Part B, rate of interest on this borrowing. 5% for foreign currency borrowing, 13% for rupee equivalent borrowing. Interest payable at the end of the year. Amount is $500. 48 rupees per dollar. Rupee equivalent loan, 13% on 45 lakhs, 4,50,000 is 58,500. Dollar rupee equivalent amount of interest would have been 24,000. This 24,000, when you compare it with 58,500, it resulted in an interest saving of 34,500. This is your savings and interest cost. Compare this with exchange loss on foreign currency borrowing. Exchange loss on dollar borrowing. 3 rupees per dollar loss on $10,000. Loss of 3 rupees per dollar into $10,000 resulted in an exchange loss of 30,000. Lower of these above should be considered as exchange loss to be considered as borrowing cost. Lower of these two is 30,000. Exchange loss considered as borrowing cost. As per Ind AS 23. What should be treated as per Ind AS 21? Nothing. Because there is no exchange loss left. Entire exchange loss you are treating it as borrowing cost only. If it is 13%. If it was 11%, we did get the amount. Exchange loss considered under Ind AS 21 is 0. Entire amount of exchange loss is being treated only under Ind AS 23. Therefore, nothing is necessary to be treated as per Ind AS 21. Clear? The answer would have been different 100% because there would have been a complete change as far as your amount of exchange loss to be considered under Ind AS 21. If I was going as per 11%, then the amount of 23 Ind AS 23 borrowing cost was 25,500, 4,500 treated as exchange loss. But if your interest rate is 30% or 13%, then your amount of exchange loss completely will be considered as borrowing cost under Ind AS 23. Nothing is left to be considered under Ind AS 21. Clear? An entity constructs a new head office commencing from 1st September, which continues till 31st of December of the same year. So how many months? September, October, November, December. 4 months. Directly attributable expenditure at the beginning of the month on this asset was 1 lakh in September and 2,50,000 in each month of October to December. The entity has not taken any specific borrowing to finance the construction of the asset, but has incurred finance cost on its general borrowing during the construction period. During the entity, the entity has issued 10% debentures with a face value of 20 lakhs and had an overdraft of 5 lakhs, which increased to 7,50,000 in December. The interest on paid on the overdraft was 15% till 1st October. However, the rate was enhanced to 16% in December. From 1st October. Calculate the capitalization rate for computing the borrowing cost in accordance with Ind AS 23. Guys, you might always come up and say it is not possible because it is only 4 months. It is not a qualifying asset. Don't bring out that kind of conclusions because down below very clearly the question is asked you, what is the capitalization rate in accordance to Ind AS 23? So only talk about capitalization rate. I think that is better for you as well as for me. Okay. Let's not comment that 4 months only, no qualifying asset. What is the point? Leave it. Only talk about what is the capitalization rate. If it is necessary to talk about the asset, then we will say that the building does not qualify does not satisfy qualifying asset definition because it is not for a substantial period of time. So if I am only looking at the concept of capitalization rate, we will have to understand what should be the cost. Remember, as far as the debentures was concerned, it was issued during the year. That means throughout the year, it was carrying an interest rate of 10% on 20 lakh of debenture. For 4 months, from September to December, during the construction period. So, on 4 months, how much? 20 lakhs into, what is the rate? 10% multiplied by 4 by 12 for 4 months. 66,667 is the interest attributable during that period for which the construction of office building was happening. But if you look at the amount of the working capital loan or the overdraft, 5 lakhs of the overdraft was which increased to 7,50,000 in December. Okay, only in December 2021 it was 7,50,000. Until then it was only 5 lakhs. So 5 lakhs was the interest which was charged at the rate of 15% up to 1st October. Subsequently, the rate was increased to 16%. So in the month of September, the value of overdraft was 5 lakhs, carried an interest rate of 15%. That means what is the amount of interest during that month? 5 lakhs into 15% divided by 12. So only in that month, the interest rate was 6257. What was the amount of interest in October then? In October, the rate of interest has increased to 16%. So for October, 5 lakhs into 16% divided by 12. So it would have become 6,667 for October and November. But in December, it is not 6,667 because in December, the value of the overdraft is 7,50,000 into 16% divided by 12. Therefore, in the month of December, the interest was calculated at the rate of 10,000. So this way, you will get the total amount of interest, which should be divided by the total amount of general borrowing outstanding throughout the period. Let's see how we'll calculate that as well. Now I got it. This is question number 7, which I am trying to solve. I am trying to determine what is the capitalization rate. Capitalization rate on non-specific borrowings. First, one non-specific borrowing was very simple to calculate, which was your debenture, because it was consistent during the 4 months. My debenture interest would have been calculated 10% interest on debentures. Is it 10%? I think it is 10%. 20 lakh into 10%, I guess. Okay. Yeah, 10% into 20 lakhs for that 4 months period. I'm calculating this only between 1st September to 31st December. Okay. So therefore, on 20 lakhs multiplied by 4 by 12, the amount of debenture interest that I'll have to consider, everything in rupee terms, calculate 2 lakhs into divided by 3, 66,667. Part B, bank OD. Bank OD, since the rate has changed in since October, amount also changed since December. Let's break it down into parts. December, bank OD outstanding was 5 lakhs. It carried an interest rate of 15% in September, 1 by 12 for September interest. Next one, for October, the loan outstanding OD is 5 lakhs, but carried an interest rate of 16% during that month. November wouldn't have been different. November also would have been similar to your October. The computation is not changing. It is 5 lakh rupee of a loan multiplied by 16% rate of interest into 1 by 12. But during the construction time, in the month of December, there is a change in the rate. What happened? This became 7,50,000 amount of loan outstanding, still carried an interest rate of 6% for the month of December, 1 by 12. Now calculate. 5 lakhs into 15% divided by 12, 6,250. 5 lakhs into 16% divided by 12, 6,667. Same amount would have even carried forward for November as well. But for December, the total amount became 7,50,000. Was carrying an interest rate of 16%. Only for that month, amount of interest would have been 10,000. If I combine all these figures, I should be identifying what is the total total interest on non-specific borrowings. Total interest on non-specific borrowings. Calculate the total, guys. 10,000 plus 6,667 plus 6,667 plus 6,250 plus 66,667. Total amount would have been 96,250. 1 actually, but okay, I'll take it as 250 because it was a rounding off error. Now, total interest should be divided by the total non-specific borrowing. Correct? This is total total interest on non-specific borrowing. Let us try to calculate in a similar manner total average non-specific borrowing. Guys, the interest is only calculated for 4 months. Even the average of your non-specific borrowing should also be calculated only for 4 months. Okay, only for 4 months I have to calculate because I did not take annual interest. So you cannot take total amount of borrowing throughout the year. Only for that 4 months. 1. First, to the extent of the debentures. 4 months debentures outstanding. If I take an average, 20 lakhs into 4 by 12. As far as the bank code is concerned, for 3 months, the bank code was the same. Which 3 months? From September up to December. For December, they have changed because the bank code now became 7,50,000. It was 5 lakhs for September, October and November, 3 by 12. But it became 7,50,000 for 1 month, which was outstanding during the period of December. Calculate 20 lakhs into 4 by 12. So for the 3 months, the amount of outstanding debenture value was 6,66,000. 5 lakhs into 3 by 12. 1,25,000. 7,50,000 into divided by 12. 62,500. The total should give you average non-specific borrowing outstanding for the period of 4 months. $8,54,100. You know the total non-specific borrowing. You know total interest on non-specific borrowing. So calculate. This is total average of non-specific borrowings outstanding between the period of September to December, correct? So therefore find out the capitalization rate. CR is equal to amount of interest. What is the interest amount? 96,250 divided by total borrowing value 8,54,167 multiplied by 100. This is not per annum. This is the capitalization rate for 4 months starting from September up to December. So directly you can apply it on the value of the loan utilized for the purpose of construction of qualifying asset. 96,250 divided by 854,167 as a percentage. That's it. Look back at the question. Question number 7. Yes. Yes, so debenture interest is 66,667. September, October, November, December, total interest 96,250. Absolutely right. Weighted average borrowing, he has taken the entire year borrowing, guys, which is 25,625,00. He did not divide it by 12. As simple as that. If you would have divided by 12, you will get the same thing. So during the construction period, he gets the answer of 3.756, which is for the period of only that 4 months. You multiply by 3, you will get your answer of 11.27. You multiply it by 3, you will get the same answer. Because since he did not divide it by 12, he is getting the entire year value. Okay. You have only calculated for that period. So therefore, the answer is slightly different. But if you look at, do 3.756 into 12 divided by 4. You will get 11.27. That is the same rate. Right. And that will conclude our discussion on your problems which are given in Compendium of solid illustrations. That is the last problem that we had under Compendium. No, I'm sorry. There's one more problem. Let's look at that problem as well. One more problem, guys. Look at the 8th question. This is very interesting. X began construction of a new building on 1st Jan. It obtained 1 lakh rupee of a loan to finance the construction of the building on 1st Jan 2007 at an interest rate of 10%. So there is a specific finance, therefore there is a special borrowing. A specific borrowing of 1 lakh which carried an interest rate of 10%. The company's other outstanding loans are 5 lakhs and 9 lakhs which carried an interest rate of 11% and 13%. The expenditure made on the building project were as follows. 2 lakhs on Jan, April 2 lakh 50, July 4 lakh 50, December 1 lakh 20. Building completed on 31st December. Following the principles of IND AS 16, okay, AS 16, you can follow IND AS 23. Answer wouldn't have been different. Calculate the amount of interest to be capitalized. Pass one journal entry for capitalizing the cost and the borrowing cost in respect of the building. So let's start. First, let me calculate your capitalization rate on non-specific borrowings because we'll have to use that. Look at the total value of expenditure, 2 lakh, 2 lakh 50, 4 lakh 50, 1 lakh 20. If you total everything, I'm landing it up at 11 lakh 20,000 of expense. But how much was specific borrowing? 1 lakh only. So the balance 10 lakhs 20,000 has been spent out of non-specific borrowing, on which we have to apply capitalization rate. So let's first start with identifying the capitalization rate. Then we will solve about finding out what is the amount of borrowing cost which is eligible to be capitalized. Question number 8. First have a heading as capitalization rate. When we are looking at capitalization rate, calculate guys. Use your formula. What was the borrowing? 5 lakhs. Carried an interest rate of 11%. 9 lakhs. Carried an interest rate of 13%. Total borrowing is 14 lakhs. This is 55,000 interest. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 55,000. And this is how much? 90,000 plus 27,000, 1,17,000. Total interest, 1,72,000. Calculate your capitalization rate. CR is equal to 1,72,000 divided by 14 lakhs into 100. Find out the capitalization rate from this. 1,72,000 divided by 14 lakhs to 100. 12.29. 2857 it is. I'll take it as 12.29 guys. Take it as 12.29%. Take it as 12.29% guys. 2857 is actually correct. Okay, you can round it off. Now let's try to establish borrowing cost eligible to be capitalized. For this borrowing cost eligible to be capitalized, I should identify the cost or the weighted average cost incurred on the qualifying asset. Weighted average cost on qualifying asset. Second guys, I don't know why, but it's yeah. So cost was incurred over multiple dates. Let's identify what is the weighted average cost there. Average cost per annum. Let's try to calculate. Look at your question. Jan, what is the date on which the building was completed? 31st December. So this 2 lakhs was spent throughout the year. 2 lakhs into 12 by 12. April, I spent 2 lakh 50. That is only for 9 months. Because April to December, so 2 lakh 50,000 into 9 by 12. In July, 4 lakh 50,000 into 6 by 12. December, 1 lakh 20,000. Only for 1 month I have utilized the borrowing. So let's calculate. First amount is 2 lakhs, which I'll apply for the entire 12 months. The next amount was 2 lakh 50,000. It was incurred in April, 9 by 12. Am I correct? Was it 2 lakh 50? Yeah. 4 lakh 50 for 6 months. 4 lakh 50,000 rupees for 6 months. And finally 1 lakh 20,000 rupee only for 1 month. So this cost which I will get, first case entire 2 lakhs weighted average cost. Second case 2 lakh 50,000 into 9 by 12. Get the answer? 2 lakh 50,000 into 9 by 12. 1 lakh 87,500. 4 lakh 50,000 into 6 by 12 is 2 lakh 25,000. Last one is 10,000. So the total cost actually incurred on the construction of qualifying asset in 459 and 10 lakh 20,000. But the weighted average cost is 2 lakh plus 1 lakh 87,500 plus 2 lakh 25,000 plus 10,000. 6 lakh 22,000. Guys, out of this weighted average expenditure which you incurred on qualifying asset, I'll divide it broadly into two parts. The amount spent from specific borrowings how much did you spend from specific borrowing? 1 lakh. How much did I spend from non-specific borrowing then? If specific borrowing was 1 lakh in the amount, then the non-specific borrowing would have been the balance. What is the amount of balance? 5 lakh 22,500. Applying the rate of interest, for specific borrowing, actual interest at 10%. For non-specific borrowing, capitalization rate which we identified at 12.29. Therefore, borrowing cost eligible to be capitalized. Borrowing cost eligible to be capitalized. Calculate 10,000 here, and this is, what is the amount? 12.29%. 64,215.25. I'm rounding it off. Total these two, 74,215 is eligible to be capitalized. Clear? Guys, if you understood this computation of borrowing cost, weighted average cost on qualifying asset, it is fine. If you have understood whatever we solved till now, it is fine. If you did not understand, I'm only talking about the case where you did not understand this concept, then I will bring up. Another logic I'll bring. Let's look at this. There is an amount spent in April. Okay. Sorry. There was an amount spent in Jan first of all. There is an amount spent in Jan. Then again he spent in April. Then again he spent in July. And finally he spent in December. What is the amount that you spent? The amount that he spent was, first he spent 2 lakhs. April he spent 2 lakh 50. July he spent much? 4,50,000. December he spent 1,20,000. How am I financing it? Out of specific and non-specific borrowings. First 2 lakhs, let us attribute 1 lakh towards specific borrowing. The balance 1 lakh towards non-specific borrowing. That's it, specific borrowing is over. I haven't spent any further amount from specific borrowing because specific borrowing itself was 1 lakh, over 1 lakh. So the rest of the amount might have been financed only out of non-specific borrowings. So from this case, if I have to identify the borrowing cost eligible to be capitalized, borrowing cost eligible to be capitalized, then I will go like this. First, on specific borrowings, second one is the borrowing cost eligible to be capitalized on non-specific borrowings or general borrowings. On specific borrowing, 1 lakh rupees spent, which carried an interest rate of 10%. For it was incurred in Jan for the entire 12 months. Amount was 10,000 rupees. But when you talk about general borrowings, look at non-specific borrowing. First 1 lakh in Jan. Okay. 1 lakh. Rate of interest, non-specific borrowings, 12.29% for 1 month. Similarly, 2,50,000 in April. Was the rate correct? 12.29? Yes. 2,50,000 rupees in April. 2,50,000 into 12.29 into, sorry, this is 12 by 12 into 9 by 12 from April to December. Another 4,50,000 is spent from general borrowings. In July, interest is only necessary for 6 months. 1,20,000 into 12.29, finally into only 1 month because it was incurred in December itself. 1 lakh to 12.29 is 12,290. Next one, 2,50,000 into 12.29 into 9 by 12. 23,044. 4,50,000 into 12.29% into 6 by 12. 27,623. 653. Lastly, 1,20,000 into 12.29% divided by 12, 1,029. Right, total, calculate this, total 12,290 plus 23,044 plus 27,653 plus 1,229, 64,216. On non-specific plus specific, total borrowing cost eligible to be capitalized 74,216. Total borrowing cost. Eligible to be capitalized. Look at the answer that we solved above. Look at the answer that we solved above. Exactly the same answer. 74,215. 1 rupee extra I got, 74,216. Whatever method you are comfortable with, I have no problem in whatever method you choose. You choose whatever method you want. Ultimately, the answer will still remain the same. He's asking me for entries, guys. I'm going to write an entry like this. Borrowing cost to bank. How much amount of borrowing cost did I actually incur during the entire year? I'll break it down into 3 parts. First, specific borrowing of 1 lakh, I incurred 10%. Plus, non-specific borrowing of 5 lakhs at 11%. Plus, non-specific borrowing of 9 lakhs borrowed at 13%. Calculate 10,000 plus 55,000 plus 1,17,000. The total amount which I incurred is 6,77,000 throughout the year. How much is eligible to be capitalized? How much should be charged to P&L? P&L account debit, building account debit, amount capitalized to the cost of the building, to borrowing cost. What is the total amount of borrowing cost? The total amount of borrowing cost we already identified as 6,77,000. But out of this, how much is being capitalized? Only 74,215 is capitalized. Only 74,215 is capitalized. Then how much is charged to P&L? 75. 6,02,785 is eligible to be capitalized. So what is the total cost of a building? 74,215 is the amount of borrowing cost capitalized to the cost of the building, plus the total cost incurred on the building was 10,20,000. So 10,20,000 plus 74,215, that is 10,94,215 is your total cost. Clear? I'll give you sufficient time to take down, guys. Guys, if you want to still take down even the second method of solving, you can take it down. Second method of solving. hide my image so that it becomes visible for you in full screen. Yep. ICA prescribes this method of computation, guys. ICA prescribes this method of computation where you identify weighted average cost. Whichever method you follow, it is giving us the same answer, guys. No change as far as the answer is concerned. Yes, guys. So, yeah, someone has corrected me. Absolutely. This 11.27 is per annum. I agree. In the previous question, that is per annum. Because this interest was also for 4 months. And even this amount of borrowing which we calculated was also for 4 months only. Therefore, the amount of interest that I'm going to get is exactly per annum. What he calculated as 3 point some percentage was basically for the 4 months period only. I calculated it per annum. And this will bring us to the end of discussion on all the problems.